Hi everyone and welcome back to Tokyo on Fire. Today is November 30th, 2017. The Moritomo Gakuen scandal has resurfaced in spite of the Prime Minister's Herculean efforts to kind of submerge it and to throw it away, Michael.
Yeah, he actually threw an entire election in order to bury this story.
The dodge, and it's still come up.
It's still come up.
He knew that though.
He knew that it would come up, but he probably did not conceive of the Ministry of Finance admitting that it was not entirely truthful in its previous sworn testimony. That probably is something of a surprise for him, or at least it's not a pleasant realization.
Let's look at all of the steps he has taken to kind of diminish and to push this in the background that ultimately perhaps weren't successful.
Okay, first he had his wife resign from being the honorary principal of this school that was under construction. That was step one.
That was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago, but that was to detoxify the story. The story stayed toxic.
Right. The money she received?
The honor that she received, everything cleared up. We're finished here. Sayonara.
Next step. Next issue.
Let's go on to foreign policy or the economy or womenomics. The people are not interested in this. Wrong.
This has been going on for 14 months.
It's been going on for a very, very long time, and indeed, it never looks good. And it's the problem is, of course, that everyone performed exactly as the people most in their worst nightmares assumed that they would, which is the ministries, the bureaucrats would be craven and break the law in order to please the prime minister over what was a piddling and really an insignificant incident, that they would bend the rules, break the rules in order just to stay on his good side, and that the prime minister indeed thinks it's not a big deal.
Well, to date, there has been no retribution for all of these ills that people have surfaced.
Okay, so in the Moritomo Gakuen scandal, a right-wing educational organization famous for having small children recite the imperial rescript on education, wants to build a school. They go to the finance ministry, which they know is selling national assets. That was one of the things that the finance ministry has to do in order to meet the costs of government. Basically, Japan is selling the silver. And in this case, because of a relationship that the operator of the school has established, he thinks he can He can muscle them and say, look, I've got the prime minister's wife as the honorary principal of my new elementary school. How about you just give me the land? And they had several meetings where he was pushing for this, I want the land for free. I want the land for free. And the finance ministry, of course, wants to sell it because they're trying to use land sales as a way of financing the government's operations. And somehow an incredibly low price is negotiated, and indeed there's a certain kickback because the land has garbage on it, and
tremendous garbage,
because it was a garbage site. And to pay for the cleanup, the government will pay for the cleanup. So basically, it really is transferred for free. But no records were kept. Anything that was kept was burned.
And it happened in such a really very brief period of time.
There's no evidence. We're out of this. Wrong.
Right.
There were plenty of written records, and the senior vice minister is forced to resign for another scandal and starts talking, Maekawa-san, and says, oh yeah, this is exactly what happened. These are exactly the documents that I saw there. These are genuine things when a copy turns up somewhere. Yeah, this is exactly, we folded. And he starts talking, and the story reemerges.
Right.
But then they say, well, yeah, but the actual negotiation, all of the documentation for that was burned. No, it wasn't. And in fact, there's an audio recording. And the audio recording is played in the Diet. And it's clear that the ministry officials were being pushed to say, yeah, okay, you get it for free.
Right.
And you can hear on the audio, I'd like to get it for nothing. And they said, well, we're trying to get it to as close to zero as possible. It was all true. All these things that they had been denying and saying that there was no evidence, there was evidence, and indeed they had been steamrolled. For the opposition, it's not Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's over, but it's just as good.
Right.
It's a feast.
It's a feast because the Diet is in session now. The Prime Minister wants to talk about North Korean missiles, and the opposition is saying, whoa, 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 wait a minute. We have a little bit of unfinished business.
We want to talk about your friends.
Right.
And this whole, and indeed, the Prime Minister, his cabinet ratings collapsed over the summer as it became clear that this scandal and the other, the Cucek Gakuen scandal, involved gifts for my buddies, free gifts for my buddies that really eroded the credibility, not only of the ministries, but of the elected officials and of the Prime Minister himself.
Well, the thing that gets me about this is that they're not real buddies. I mean, they're kind of created buddies because he had an objective he was trying to achieve, and he glommed on to the Prime Minister. He couldn't get to him. He got to his wife, and why don't you be the headmistress? And that sounds okay. But they have hundreds of thousands of relationships like this.
Come on. It's not every person who comes to whatever ministry and says, I have the plans to build a Shinto school. We have Buddhist schools, we have Christian schools, but we don't have any Shinto schools. Well, we used to until 1945. All schools were Shinto schools, and they all worshipped. Anyway, that was then. This is now. We're going to have a Shinto school. And what are you going to call the school? Oh, the Abe Shinzo Memorial School. Sort of gives away where he thinks he's going with this project, right? And where he thinks he's going to get support for it. And indeed, if he has the Prime Minister's wife as the honorary principal, it's sort of the cat's out of the bag, okay? So you can't deny that there is a close association here. Eventually, they changed the name to something else, to Mizuho no Kuni Shogakko, which only happens to be Prime Minister Abe's favorite term for Japan, the Mizuho no Kuni, the land of abundant rice ears. He uses it in his book to describe the ideal Japan. Okay, it's transparently sycophantic to the Abe family. And he got an incredible deal in terms of the land. To say, oh, there's no quid pro quo, is to insult everyone's intelligence.
But I mean, this fellow wasn't a mover and a shaker. He was running a school for children.
Yes, it's exactly right, and that actually makes it all the better that it's such a low grade grifter, and that grifter he is. I mean, he and his wife, if they avoid long prison terms, it will be an act of Amaterasu herself getting involved in the case. But how did the Prime Minister and his wife get involved with this low-grade hood? Is just that makes the story all the better, because there has to be more for them to get involved with these people, but that's the world of the low-level right-wing politics that Mr. Abe. He's been for the past 5 years been trying to rise above it, but his feet are still in the mud.
I don't know if I would characterize him as a low-grade hood, but it was funny during the election where he would pull out the wad of money and wave it during the election campaign.
During the Tokyo metropolitan elections, when he arrived at the Akihabara site and pulled out a wad of 10,000 yen bills and was waving it at the Abes. Geez, that's the kind of theater that you associate with ward politics in Chicago or New York City, right? This is not what you associate with Japan. But this has been incredibly theatrical, and again, that for the opposition, when the opposition is electorally completely impotent, it cannot seize power through the ballot box. It must use
persuasion.
It must use the power of persuasion, and that was what was so important about the cutting down of their time. The sudden shift after the election, immediately afterwards, saying, the ratio of the ruling coalition getting 20% of the time and the opposition getting 80% of the time is utterly wrong. We need to cut down on the time that the opposition gets to speak. That was so transparently trying to bury the criticisms of the opposition.
And now we're living with that.
And now they have renegotiated. They have a 2/3, 1/3, 2/3 ratio. But even so, it's just going to tick off the opposition even more, and they're going to be they may not be pulling out knives, now they'll be pulling out swords just to stab the government to pieces.
Okay, tomorrow is the first day of December. The Diet will be in session for what? Another couple of weeks?
And
2
then,
weeks?
Yeah, then we go into the break, and then we'll have the regular session of the Diet either starting in the middle of January.
But they're going to wrap this up, aren't they?
They're not going to wrap this up because the major thrust of the Abe administration is delay, 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 delay. Let it die. But in this case, these scandals are not dying. And though Mr. Abe may think and may have thought when he called the election, this is over, it ain't over till the fat lady sings.
Why Moritomo and not one of the other kind of highlighted scandals that have been peppering the Prime Minister?
Because the Prime Minister's wife must be above suspicion. And in this case, the Prime Minister's wife was on the website and with a blurb, "This is such a wonderful organization. I am so proud to be the honorary principal of this new school."
So it's more of an attack on the not just the office of the Prime Minister, but on
It's on
this
Abe.
individual.
It's the Abes personally. It's to bring down Abe. And in that regard, there are persons within the LDP who will suddenly say, "Oh, whoops! My hand just didn't reach far enough to help you out, Mr. Abe." That you can be sure that there are other members of the
knives will come out?
The other members of the LDP are just. They may not push the Prime Minister, but they definitely won't grab his hand if he's teetering on the edge.
Okay, well, I don't see where there's a quid pro quo for this one because it's just a small school. Maybe he believed in it philosophically, but I don't see, and there's no evidence that there was money exchanged for, this favor.
We'll see what the public prosecutors say. If the public prosecutor's office takes interest in what is basically a giveaway of national property for free by bureaucrats operating in a way that seems to be illegal, then we might hear some singing where we currently hear a lot of silence.
Right. Moritomo Gakuen is an issue that's still boiling. Please stay tuned as we see how this one gets resolved.